like counting down like to. Oh, okay,
So
here we
now
are.
it's live. Now it's
Ah,
live. And we can just wait for like a few people to come on because like right now there's no one.
all right.
But yeah.
Ooh,
Hello everyone
okay.
and welcome to this live stream. Today we're talking about perspective. I have Mwape Mwelwa here with me. I hope you're going to enjoy this and it's going to help you view perspective and possibly change negative perspectives that you might have.
Mm,
Mwape,
wow.
say hello.
Oh, hi everyone. Yeah, Mwape Livestream. In case you've never seen me or this is the first time that you hear the sound of my voice, it's really good to be here. I can't thank you enough to Tinashe for having me here on her platform. I don't take this lightly, and definitely hoping to, I guess, have a great time.
I'm glad to have you here. So just a little bit of a backstory.
Mm.
Mwape subscribed to my channel. He was like one of the last few subscribers, right? So when I clicked and I saw that he sort of has like subscribers as well, I click and I find content on his channel. Hi, Mwape, are you there?
Hi, Tinashe.
We seem to have lost our connection there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay, I can't see you anymore. Have you turned off your camera?
I had, but I've just turned it back on. I don't know why it won't go back on.
Okay, and I can see Siveso Mate and Johanna Bolton here. Hello there. Thank you for watching. Sorry for a little technical difficulty. I think Zambian
Yeah,
internet.
I suspect.
Yeah,
Okay,
I still can't see you, Mwape.
just a moment. Wow.
Um, People are saying they can't hear. Can you hear Joanna? Johanna. Sorry, the mispronunciation. Am I audible now? Okay, I think now I'm audible. Sorry guys, we seem to have lost. Okay, Mwape is back on. Yay, we have you back. Sorry about the technical difficulty,
Hey.
but on track. Hello, hello everyone that was here already. Hello, Sibu Sisiwe Tehilach Sili. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you so much for joining us, joining this live stream. We're sorry for the technical difficulty. It was the Zambian internet, but we're back on track. Hi, Tionge. Thank you for joining us. Before we to technical difficulty, hi, Romeo. I can see you as well. Before we had our technical difficulty, I was talking about how I discovered Mwape. So I knew Mwape already. We have a mutual friend, and we encountered each other a few times. So we're like in each other's networks. But he had subscribed to my YouTube channel, and I just decided to click onto his, and I was blown away by his content. And if you guys could also go and subscribe to Mwape's channel, I was saying like I subscribed to his channel with all three of my Google accounts. Just to make sure he has more subscribers. Go over to his channel, and I was just blown away by how he spoke of perspective and just the importance of how you view things, impact that has on your life. And so I reached out through our mutual friend, and here we are. I hope you guys are going to be as blessed as I was. Don't forget to subscribe to his channel. It's called Perspective with Mom. So, Mwape, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you like to do, and that sort of stuff.
Oh, wow. First of all, I just want to ask, can you see me?
No, for some reason you're I can hear you just fine, and we
Yeah,
can see you smile, but yeah, you are inanimate.
oh my goodness, I can't figure out
But
why
you
my
can
computer.
proceed. I think it must be the
Okay.
internet. I'm sure it will catch up.
Okay, yeah, but thank you so much for that introduction. Like she said, I think I sort of knew a little bit about her, had an opportunity to just be around her, I think, a while back, but this is the first interaction of this nature, and I'm really glad that I could be here to do this. And obviously, perspective is something that I guess we both have sort of a mutual interest in. And for me, primarily, I guess you could say it's been something that has been somewhat of a defining factor of my life. And I now do my best to share my perspective, not only with those close to me, my family, but I guess also through YouTube now, which is something I'm excited to do. And beyond that, I think those that are close to me kind of know that I like to cook. So you said what I like to do.
Uh-huh.
So I
So,
think I'm
like, what's
gonna.
your favorite thing to cook? Because I
Ooh,
love to eat and I like to cook as well.
ooh, wow, my favorite thing to eat would probably be grilled chicken. I really, really love grilled chicken. I don't know if you can say the same, but for me, it's really a big deal.
I like grilled chicken as well. What type of seasoning? Like, put a gun to your head, like Mwape, do a grilled chicken. Like, what type of seasoning? What are you serving the chicken with?
Whew, wow. I have to go with something homemade. Perhaps maybe with let's go with something with honey. Let's go with something with some lemon. Mix it up with maybe just a little bit of sugar just for the sweet, some black pepper, salt, definitely garlic, and what else? I don't know, but something in that
Never
in that
leave
in
out the garlic.
that. Yeah, so I think that would be somewhat of a thing that I would go for.
Okay, that sounds lovely. So one of the things you didn't mention, and this is one of the things I know you do, is Toastmasters. Could you tell us
Hey.
a little bit about that and how you got to it and what it's done for your life and like shaping your perspective?
Wow. Wow. Toastmasters is an international organization that pretty much helps people become competent speakers and communicators, rather, and as well as leaders. And over the years, I kind of had a passion for public speaking. I don't think that I lacked so much in confidence, but what I lacked was the skill and I guess the how
Mm.
to deliver. So Toastmasters really helped fine tune those skills and abilities, and as well as give me a platform where I could then speak and as well fail because I think it takes a number of times to really learn to get something right. So that's kind of what Toastmasters is all about. But I guess since we're here and we're talking about perspective, you asked me some interesting questions about myself, but then I'm also curious to know, I think, a little bit with regard to you, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. This is a conversation, so feel free, shoot.
Yeah, I think one of the first things, obviously, when dealing with such a subject, it's something that I was kind of thinking about before coming here is just what exactly or when exactly did you realize that your perspective matters?
Hmm. I think that's an excellent question. I think for me, it's funny, but I think it's a lesson. I can't pinpoint the first time I realized it, but I think
Hmm.
I have so many points in my life when the lesson has been reiterated and maybe
Hmm.
rebranded, maybe defined in a different way. Because
Hmm.
sometimes you understand that perspective matters, maybe in terms of maybe your body image, but then maybe you
Hmm.
didn't understand how it affects your academic performance, or how it
Hmm.
affects your view on the world. Our
Hmm.
preliminary conversation, you said something very interesting. Perspective. You said perspective is a lens or a filter with which you
Hmm.
see the world, and
Hmm.
your lens or your filter could either be really clear or it could be murky, and you
Hmm.
have a very bad perspective on the way that you view the world.
Hmm.
Then you view everything even when it's not bad. I'll give you one of the most profound epiphanies I had regarding perspective. Our
Okay.
perspective regarding Zambia and
Mm.
Zambia's place in the world because
Hmm.
of reasons, and I think colonialism to be one of the primary ones.
Hmm.
Many of us were taught to look down on Zambia, to look down on Zambian products, to look. We were taught, the lesson was continually branded that being Zambian or Zambian product is inferior, and we kept
Hmm.
holding it to be Western standards and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Then, like, it just dawned on me, like, no, why is it that Zambia is must reach a certain standard. Why is Zambia enough the way it is? Or if it's not okay the way it is, why should our definition not be based on something that is homegrown, something that is we set as citizens and as Zambians and as young people? Why should it be, oh my God, what does the West think about Zambia? What does this country think about? Like, why is it always about someone else's perspective of, and why is our image based on how another person is viewing it or measuring it?
Yeah.
And I think that type of mentality sort of shaped the way that I view Zambia and the way I look at so many things, the way I look at our potential, the way I look at our resources. Because, for example, it doesn't make sense. We are one of the wealthiest countries in terms of the resources that we have, but we are a joint Wali. Like, if you don't know what that is, it's someone on someone else's couch, you know, and we are depending on other people for our economy, for our healthcare. Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense, and it's because we've been that we are disabled, or look at our reasons and we say we cannot do anything with them in the absence of someone from outside the country. So I know that's a mouthful. I think for me, that's one of my most.
Oh, wow.
That answers your question.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. It sort of begs me to kind of another question in line with perspective. And this is kind of, I think, more personal because you did such a great job talking about Zambia in general and also just other things that kind of we've had to unlearn and kind of see differently. But I guess in your personal walk and in what you're currently doing, especially with now your Facebook page and other endeavors, what has been what are some of the hardest things that you've had to unlearn or see with a different lens?
Please ask that again. What are some of the things within my personal walk that I've
within
had?
your personal life.
I think it goes back to definitions, like definitions that taught. For example, you might not experience this, but like as a woman, for example, I've been taught that I am certain things and I'm not certain things. And I'll be honest, I think I'm privileged to be raised in a home where I didn't really have that in terms of male, female roles and, you know, stuff like that. But it's something that I definitely encountered outside of society. And I think outside of the home, like in the society. And I think before it frustrated me, and it still frustrates me. But one of the things I had to unlearn was expecting people to view things that I see things. And, you know, the you realize that, okay, people have not had the opportunities you've had. People have not maybe read the things you've had or learned the things that you have. They're stuck in that mentality. And that's the only thing they can do. So you now have to come down to that level, right? And in order to help them, in order for you to help them to see things the right way, or what I think is the right way, you have to understand, come down to their level. You know, like as human beings, sometimes we're so aggressive with our perspective, forcing our perspective on other people, but you have to understand people have a view with the way that they view the world, and you have to, a lot of the time you have to be more loving than you would initially. So I think for me that's one of my greatest life lessons. And then I don't know, like I can't really think of things I have to unlearn, but I can definitely tell you lessons I've learned.
Wow.
And I guess in a sense that's unlearning. So like another one is the whole thing of being a female, having to deal with that. Let's say because you're bold or you're confident, they want to put you down and tell you, wait, as a woman you should not do that. Why is it you are the only that thinks knows everything? You know, things like that. And again, this is real. But it goes back to the thing of having to understand, like, wait, these people have been conditioned a certain way. And if you just get angry at them, you butt heads. But it's about your delivery. I hope, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it certainly does. Wow. Especially concerning, I guess, being a woman. Okay.
So what this is, I think very good question. I would like you to answer the question you just asked me.
Oh wow, things that I had to unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
Whew. I think one of the when it comes to sort of a perspective and obviously beyond thinking of a perspective as a lens, I think also perspective is more or less a mindset. And one of the biggest things I had to unlearn is that my perspective does not have to be shaped by circumstances. I find that a
Mm,
lot of us kind of have got a different upbringing, have different, life experiences. You know, we have different kinds of relationships, all I guess, which complement who we are or have an impact on who we are. But for me, one of the
mm-hmm,
biggest things that I think even till today that I have to constantly unlearn is the fact that my experience or my life experience does not necessarily have to be the lens with which I view my life as. And in this regard, before I give a personal example, I'm always kind of intrigued by a person named Joseph because he kind of endured some very hard circumstances.
mm,
And I think it was like, it's kind of hard for him to maybe, I thought it was kind of hard to come out of that and not have a
mm-hmm,
weird perception of family, of yourself. And so for me, I kind of took lessons from that and started to look at my own life and consider some of the things that perhaps were not true. I think, and in speaking about this, one of them is also just family and I think that's one of the things that I've really had to unlearn. What does it really mean to be in a family? What does it mean to be part of a family? You know, even just my worldview, I guess, not my worldview, but my perception of what marriage
mm-hmm,
is. I think those I kind of realized have been feeding all this while into who I am today. So that's one thing. It's like, oh, you know what? If we can start here, it kind of helps this side. So it's not really a process, it's not really a destination, but it's more like a journey that even till today,
I
I
love
can tell you,
that.
like, it's like every day you have to remind yourself, like, hey, that's not true. This is the truth that I embrace now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Absolutely. What you said about perspective not being a destination, it's a process, right?
mm, hmm.
So now that you're speaking, you've actually like what you actually just now gave me like in-depth answers because I guess it gave me time to reflect. I think one of the things that I've also had to unlearn, for example, is like you were saying, perspectives on marriage, because I think we see so many bad and we see so many negative examples that you think that that's
Hmm.
all there is. One of the
Yeah.
things that I've learned, okay, bad marriages are like a reality. They don't
Hmm.
have to be. And
Hmm.
then it to the okay, so what can I do to avoid that? Okay, let me be thorough about choosing my partner, because
Hmm.
marriage like predominantly an institution created by God. What does he say about it? Like, what was his
Hmm.
design for it? And something that's very interesting is also the way that, for example, one thing I really had to unlearn was the way that I viewed submission. Before
Mm.
I viewed something oppressive, and
Mm.
almost like there's some very things, there's some very this the things that make me uncomfortable about the Bible, right? I'll be
Okay.
honest, and I'm Christian and I love God and I have these conversations with God. However,
Hmm.
for example, one of the things that I learned about submission is it's actually not a form of oppression. It's just it's a design. It's there's something actually beautiful, and you can I
Hmm.
still believe in feminism and I still believe in like women being equal to men and stuff like that. And submission is something that I had to unlearn. But one of the critical ones, which I think
Hmm.
changed, is perspective of failure.
Pardon.
Before,
Pardon?
failure was like a dead end.
Mm.
One of the things I learned was my perspective on failure. Before,
Wow.
failure to me was like a right, and it was
Hmm.
like sometimes also I think I'm my own biggest critic, and
Hmm.
I'm very oriented. So when I feel like
Hmm.
the effort and like the results, like it can be so. But when I started to view my like failure as just a point to restrategize and
Hmm.
just for me to be fine and for me to just take a step back and just say, okay, what can I do differently? Or is there a way of me achieving the same aim of what I'm trying to achieve with this task through a different means, through a different way? What do I need to alter? The thing with failure is we allow failure to beat us down and make us maybe sometimes question our worth or our value, or maybe to sort of impress even some sort of inferiority on us. You just failure has a way of just draining our energy. And when I'm not saying failure is not hard, and I'm not saying when I encounter failure now I'm smiling, but the decided that I was not going to be defined by areas where I failed or areas I was not my best self. It was a game, because the moment that you're like, okay, I've failed, but what can I do to ensure that I never fail this way again? Or what can I learn from, what lessons, like I have not met the expectation, but what lessons can I take away from this encounter that will make me a better rounded individual, and that will give me more experience? I think that's been one of my most profound ones.
Wow, that's incredibly profound. I think I'm tempted to kind of speak on that a little because I
Please
like
go
to
ahead.
almost I like to almost think that I have somewhat of a qualification in failure, and I guess maybe to those who are close to me, my first university experience was not the best because I subsequently ended up being excluded from the university where I was at, Lungushi University. And I can tell you that coming back home and not feeling like much of anything or like you have any worth, it was a time when like that really started to shape my worldview. And perhaps maybe there's somebody who could be watching who's being in such a position where you've encountered failure. It could even be like in a relationship, like failure with relationships. And it's very possible for those things to kind of feel like the end of the world. And I was in this place where I kind of felt like I needed like an outside force, like some kind of big shift or some wind or something from the outside to kind of push me into what was supposed to be the next momentum to kind of try again. But I find that, a lot of the times what we're waiting for, what we're holding on to, and with regard to how this changed my perspective, is that what I needed was kind of always within me. Like it was up to me to now begin to pick up the pieces. It was up to me to begin to take steps by, steps, and just taking responsibility for what had happened. Because I feel like a lot of the times people kind of wait for some kind of thing to kind of change how they view things. But I feel like the tools are within us. And, up to this day, like those same tools that I learned then are kind of what I use now. So when you spoke about failure, I couldn't help but really relate to that idea and just feel like, wow, hey, I know what it's like to fail. I guess it looks different for everyone. And in kind of talking about this, you had brought up something which was kind of interesting, and I wanted to get your mind on it. You talked about how, like you've had to change your perspective about different things. And this is something that personally for me has always been intriguing. For example, I understand that you have sisters. If you have a particular perspective, let's say about relationships, and your sisters don't share the same thing, it kind of creates a bit of a problem. So how have you been able to navigate dealing with people, and obviously beyond just family, in the workplace, at school, like wherever it is, how have you been able to sort of deal with others who don't necessarily have the same perspective or lens?
Love that question. I think that's an excellent question. I think it first of all starts from I think must encounter those situations first of all in a loving way, a way that you protect yourself as well, but you're also taking into account the other person. And let's, for example, one of the things I do is political related, right? So within the political field is we have so many people with different political ideologies, and we have people that have different perspectives on so many different things. I think one of the things you should do in such situations is look for what brings you together, not what sets you apart. So one of the things I'll do is like, okay, so what can we agree on before we even talk about, okay, and that's one of the things, for example, in founding the Center for Young Leaders in Africa, which is a multi-party organization, we first of all did. It's like, okay, before we have these different ideologies, what do we agree on as young people, as Zambian young people? What do we need? Okay, so we agree on employment issues. We agree on this and this and this. Okay. So now where are the differences? Okay, I believe we should take a more socialist approach to this. Okay, I believe we should take this type of approach to it. Like, okay, why do you? I think asking the first important thing to also ask is why. So when you ask why, insight into how that person thinks, and sometimes they might change your mind, sometimes they might not. And then there's times you just agree to disagree. You have to understand, like, our paths are different, right? And we don't always have to view things the same way. Like, if you have a view of what black should be used for, white should be used for, why do you always want me to share your view? If you, we will go faster or we will achieve more if we're sharing that view. That's one.
Yeah.
But if you just want to recruit an army of people who think like you, that's another thing. So I think the question with perspective is to always ask why. It's like, okay, how is that beneficial for me? If someone has a certain point of view and I have like a different direction for my life, why on earth should I adopt something because someone else views it that type of way, and it's not going to have its place or a proper application within my life and my context. So I think that's one of the ways that I deal with it. Like, I know myself as an individual, I know my course, I know my direction, and that sort of stuff. How do you deal with that?
Me? Oh wow, that's a very interesting one because I can say that I faced a lot of frustration, I guess, in the beginning when you kind of have a particular opinion or kind of a worldview, and other people don't necessarily view the same thing like you. In the beginning, I would honestly want to distance myself because I always felt like that way we have less relational conflict, So that means if I keep it to myself and you stay over there, then it creates some sort of peace. But truthfully, that was not peace. I honestly believe that conflict, in like the conflict in this case, just needs to be addressed, and that way we're able to grow deeper in, I guess, the connection that we have. So one of the things that, for me personally, that I do now in dealing with people who don't really have the same viewpoint as me or the same perspective as me is really just to try and understand where they're coming from and where that viewpoint is rooted. Like, because I think that every perspective and every mindset kind of has a root of where it started. Nobody kind of just has an idea today, like, oh, you know what, I want to be a narcissist. I want to, like, there's kind of a root to why they view things that way. So for me, in dealing with people, it's kind of like I want to understand, like, okay, where did this come from and why is it here now? Like, if and in oftentimes I find that the compassion within me is kind of like, oh, you know what? I think I understand why you're this way, or I understand perhaps maybe why you share that viewpoint. And from that point on, I'm not on the offensive. I'm more trying not just to win the person with love, not to win them to my viewpoint, but just to win them as a genuine person. So this has looked differently in different relationships, because I can definitely tell you with my parents or with my friends or even like with the people around me, it's looked differently. With others, I guess it's easier. And with others, it's a lot harder. And I'm still navigating those relationships today, But the one thing that I've chosen not to do is not to separate myself entirely from these people, but just really be available and open. I hope
I think no, it really does. And I think it's something very critical. And I just want to share image because I think it gives a great, can you see? This gives a great example of perspective in terms of conflict. So why it's always important to ask why, because this is the same thing, just that depending on where you're standing, this thing looks different.
That's
so
true.
Perspective, interesting thing, and always seeking to know the perspective of another person helps you understand situations, particularly in conflict. So moving on this a little bit, what would you say have been like what has shaped your perspective the most? So us, for example, I love to read. I'm a bookworm, so books books shape a lot of my perspective. So which books for you would you say have shaped your perspective, or is there anything in particular other outside of books that has really like helped shape your perspective?
Wow. I think without even thinking about it much, the first one obviously has to, for me, it has to be the Bible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that really did a great job helping me have the right perspective. With regard to books, there's so many. But there's one thing that I feel that oftentimes I think if people learn to embrace more would really help them great. And I've been seeing
Mm-hmm.
more of this in my relationships than anything in my perspective. And that's for me, I guess it's journaling and just yeah, journaling. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason I say journaling is because it has helped me to become more self-aware. So that means I'm able to see rightly what's going on within me. You know, it's like, okay, what happened here? What kind of thoughts were going through my mind, or what's this idea that's kind of consistent in my thoughts? You know, it could be even, for example, around money. It could be around relationships. Could be around work. But like just to be able to put my world on paper and see it, it's actually been able to help me pick out the things that are like, okay, this is not okay here. Like this should be different. And then from that point, I've now reinforced my knowledge and my perspective with good books. So for me, I think that's been one of the ways that I've really been able to, I guess, benefit from just learning to be more self-aware. I guess, and if I were to speak on being self-aware, there's so many ways I guess one could become self-aware. But for me, the one that I would recommend is really to be journaling and just uh, to keep a record of your thoughts and ideas, I guess, that pop into one's head. So that has done a lot.
Mm.
Yeah, you
I think.
mentioned
Pardon. Please go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're sort of a bookworm, and I'm curious to know, like, what kind of books, or what book would you say that you've read 1,000 times, or maybe not 1,000 times, but you definitely read it again, that kind of just speaks to you so greatly?
I with books, it depends on like the genre. So like it's a bad habit that I'm trying to stop. But like I will
Okay.
typically have so no, the bad habit I'm trying to stop is I'll typically have like 3 books that I'm reading at any one time. So I'll be reading something that really great literature, which helps me with like just with my vocabulary, with being
Hmm.
articulate, stuff like that. Be
Hmm.
reading something that will be feeding my mind,
Wow.
something that feeds my mind, something I can learn from, and then something as well that helps shape me as a person, or helps build my faith, my Christian faith, or my personality, or my character.
Mm.
Sometimes it's hard. Like I'm trying to just focus on one and then read the other. It's a habit that
Mm.
I've had for quite a long time. But if I were to like, I think all of those genres like impact me in different ways, because sometimes you will feel like this is just like a non book. What am I going to learn from this? But the way that writers just put stuff into books just has
Hmm.
a very funny way. Like one of my writers is like Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi, and she just has
Mm.
this way of taking you on like an emotive trip, like a
Hmm.
really emotive trip, and you
Wow.
learn so much. So, and someone else that I like is a guy called Khaled Hosseini.
Hmm.
He's a and he wrote a book
Okay.
called um Thousand Splendid Suns, The Kite Runner. And he just
Hmm.
like what I learned from that book, for example, was I only ever looked at the Middle East from what I saw on the media and what the
Wow.
news told, and what we were able, but then like he put a human face on Afghanistan and the Middle
Mm.
East through his stories. Before it was so
Wow.
detached. We only ever saw war. We never actually, for me personally, I only
Wow.
ever saw that. I never actually saw humans. And then
Mm.
right now I'm reading a book called Milk in a Basket. It's by someone called
Okay.
Akasham Batwa. It's about
Wow.
the history of Zambia, like our development history, our economic history. It's so potent. And then the
Mm.
like, people like Dambisa Moyo also have had like a very huge impact on me. There's one of my favorite books is To Kill a Mockingbird. It's by some lady called Harper. Like I could go on and on and on,
I don't doubt that.
like on and on. I wouldn't say there's any one book I've read over and over, but I guess I pretty much go back to books for like different.
Mhm.
I think a good book on perspective moved my cheese.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I don't know if the authors will be mad at me. I was recently a book that is going to be out very soon. It's called Waiting for the World to Die by someone called Romeo Smith. I it's going to, but I
Okay.
think when that book is out, I think I'll post the link. Such an amazing book. It gives you a different perspective in coronavirus and
Oh, wow.
what it's like in a different context. Because I think because here in the
Hmm.
devastation wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
And, like we felt it quickly, but we haven't felt it on the scale that America has felt it, for example. So it really gave insight because he got the coronavirus and he got really
Oh,
sick.
no.
Getting insight into survivors' experience was that was a
Mm.
open perspective. So I guess
Wow.
something else that we could maybe draw from this is getting insight gives you a different perspective. I think from general conversation that we've been having, I think
Hmm.
that's something we can deduce. And then also from what you said about journaling, about the Bible, because even I feel like the Bible has also had a very profound impact on my life. Proverbs, for example, which is one of my favorite books,
Hmm.
has really helped shape the way I view things. So just
Mm.
coming premise. Would you agree that the perspective you have, like in your personal life and in the day-to-day things you do you agree with the view that those things really shape your life and shape the direction in which your life is going?
Wow. That's a very interesting question, and I had sort of a thought about this when I was sort of just thinking about this conversation with you. I think one of the things that I do believe is that definitely perspective does shape us, but I think also another thing which kind of plays an important role in perspective is also our core values. For instance, one of my biggest core values is family. I have a really big place and a big heart for family, so I really like to think that that kind of shapes my decision making, like the perspective which I see, kind of has a big impact on the way that I handle my family or the way that I'm, deliberate about my siblings and my parents as well. So I definitely do believe that the perspective and even just what we believe has a way of sort of directing and sort of pointing you could say, our feet in a certain direction. I really don't think that it's possible to get to a particular destination if everything within you is wired not to get there. If you're trying to maybe, for instance, for lack of example, I mean, just for lack of better words, just you're trying to fly out of Zambia and you're trying to go, let's say you're trying to go to the UK. If the plane is already facing the opposite direction, it's kind of hard for you to get to your destination because everything that you're doing in that moment is pointing in the opposite direction. So the
Mhm.
perspective or the lens which you're seeing life through kind of needs to point in the direction that you want. I think there are a lot of people who have sort of like a conflict within themselves because in one regard they kind of speak like they want the best for themselves. They kind of speak like, they want success. They kind of speak like they want to have a good life, but within them, their mind, which I think is more important than the perspective, is kind of wired at believing that the best is not simply for them. So we have people who kind of always have this like, yeah, I'm trying to do this, but within them their thoughts are always worrying them and saying that's not for you. Like, so for me, it's like I'd rather, like, first of all you start to see differently before you can even like I guess be trying to speak it. And understand speaking has a particular effect, but in order to have the right perspective, like your thoughts need to align, your core values need to align. So I guess I'll definitely agree that it has an impact on that. I don't know if that kind of makes sense or answers your question.
It does. You said something very profound about before, essentially, let me paraphrase what you're saying. Before we can begin to manifest things in life, we have to
Mm,
first visualize them.
mm-hmm,
And the way that we visualize things determines whether or not they will come to be or whether or not we will first say it's possible. Am I
mm.
paraphrasing correctly?
Yeah. Yes, sure.
And I think for me that's so profound because I think a lot of the time we underachieve or we don't achieve because of how we view ourselves. Like for example, we're going to say, I want to pass an exam, but you
Mm-hmm.
first of all think that you're a person who's capable of passing that exam, or you don't even feel worthy of that exam. We say we want a certain type of life, and we feel like, okay, deep down inside we, that's not for me. Maybe other people, maybe that kind of thing. And the funny thing is, what we manifest, whether or not we realize it. So rather than
Mm-hmm.
us using our energy and mental strength to work towards the thing that we really want, because
Mm-hmm.
we think that it's unattainable to us, we now start
Mm-hmm.
to distribute energy and focus to things that aren't even going to help us achieve that, because we have first told ourselves that we are not capable of achieving that. um
Wow.
Earlier I told you, like, I'm very passionate about, with everything that I do, I'm passionate about like the development of Zambia and of
Mm-hmm.
Africa.
Mm-hmm.
um I strongly believe that one of the reasons why at Zambia we are not as developed as we should be is because
Mm-hmm.
of the perspective that we have of ourselves. We feel that it's okay for us to always be the people on the receiving end of aid.
Yeah.
We believe it's okay for us to always be the last ones in the know-how of innovation and not capable of being the people that produce gadgets that the rest of the world desires or wants.
Mm-hmm.
We're not people that will produce life-changing software or life-changing innovation. Like for
Yeah.
us, that's not us. Like, we're the people that, if you want to talk about corruption, yes, we're here. If you want to talk about something else, but when it comes to innovation, nah, go to China, and because that mentality is so deeply ingrained in us and how we view ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we're not pursuing the great things we should be pursuing as a country, but also as a people, because as people we feel like that to begin with. We really feel
Mm.
like, is this a sentiment you share, or do you like a different perspective?
Oh wow. That's a very interesting question, and I'm gonna give you before I maybe speak on that. Um, I have a friend who happens to kind of live in Europe, and I guess in beginning our friendship, one of the first things that they brought out was the fact that, you know what, like, you strike me as like you're kind of different because you don't necessarily strike me as somebody who's from Africa. I know I'm paraphrasing, and if they're watching this, I mean no harm by this. But it's kind of like this narrative that not only that we ourselves have had to combat, but like the rest of the world has this view of us. Like, like, okay, if people are out there, then they must be really just have this weird worldview. And for me personally, one of the things that kind of bother me about, I could say, Zambians in general, is that there is this thing that kind of, there's a complacency when it comes to the pursuit of knowledge. Because I really feel like acquiring knowledge is essentially what's going to help us see ourselves in a different light, and at least even give us the confidence and the competence to even pursue some of the things that we feel are beyond us. So I can't necessarily say that what you just shared is not true, but at the same time, I'm actively working at trying to remedy what has been damaged from so many
Yeah.
years, and even people just being comfortable in saying, you know what, this is how things are. Some would say, I see some people who, in my hometown, like their story hasn't changed for a long time. I kind of see them in the same predicament, same circumstances, year in, year out. And it's like, oh my goodness, if you could just have a different perspective about yourself and what you're able to do. And I remember kind of speaking to someone about this to say, for a very long time, the narrative has been the government is not helping us. The government is not doing this. The government is not doing that. And it's like, okay, but what are you doing about it? Like,
Exactly.
it's like, what are you doing about it to kind of help? And I think that's for me one of the driving forces. It's like, as much as we want better leaders and leaders who can be held accountable to the standards of the land, but more importantly, we also want people who are not passive. They're not just laying down and just saying, "Hey, do something for us, help us. We put you in power." So I feel like we as well have a responsibility, and I think every day is kind of like an opportunity to do so. And if I'm to be honest, I think I talked about in the beginning how I wanted to distance myself. I kind of felt like, these people don't want to learn, but now it's like I'm out here in spite of maybe me not necessarily enjoying that worldview. It's like I'm trying to help, I'm trying to share, like obviously not trying to impose on anybody's life, but just really trying to show them different, to say, it's possible. I think those that know me, one thing that I like to encourage, even in just my friends, is if they have an idea, I'll be like, hey, go do it. Yeah, go do it. Just do it. Just do it. If I can, I'll design a poster for you because I'm kind of into graphics. Like, I'm like, how can I help
You
you?
designed the poster for this discussion. Yeah.
So how can I just help you effectively pursue that? So it's something that we definitely see, but the goal and the desire within me is not to let that be the story that is told of us.
I think you've said so many gems, like you've said so many things. Like I'll just, one of the first things I want to touch on is you said, and I'm going to paraphrase you again.
Please.
Perspective also determines how you view the situation, determines the perspective you have on whose responsibility your well-being is.
Mm.
And I think you saying that was very profound, because we think that our well-being is the responsibility of the government. It almost, it's like, okay, because the government isn't doing anything, I'm going to sit down. But what if we ever had a government that did the right thing? What will happen? Does that mean Zambia will never develop? Does that mean Africa will never? And these are the questions that as young people, we need to start to ask ourselves. Like, we cannot keep putting responsibility in people that maybe have different priorities, or, basically telling you want responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like how you view a situation is going to show you your perspective of whose responsibility something is. And you can see in situations like the way that we litter, right? And I always joke about how in Zambia you need an app to find a, like, just litter in, and that always bothers me. Again, it goes back to perspective, because sometimes people donate, people steal them, because to them that really has no value, and it's like, why should we put these? I can sell this bin, or whatever they do with those bins when they get them. People will just throw, and the council will come and clean. And also, people don't have that responsibility. It also creates a certain sort of complacency with the councils, right? So again, I'm just saying, like, our perspective determines whose responsibility. And then something else, something profound at the beginning when you were talking about how your friend just had a different perspective. And what I drew from that, because I've also had an encounter, even me, a friend, a colleague, if you are watching this, the first things he told me was, you don't talk like an African. I'm just like, African's supposed to sound like, you know yourself. I'm not calling you out. That's so hilarious. But again, I can't blame them, because they're shown a certain perspective of what Africans are supposed to be, what we're supposed to look like, the type of things we're supposed to do. I remember us watching this series, and it was on slavery, and it was set in the West African coast. And then the actors had a South African accent, Southern African accent. Just like, whoever wrote this really does not know Africa, because West Africans sound like that. First of all, you either get your geography right, or you need to fire the person that was responsible for related stuff. But again, it goes back to the perception. And I'm mentioning to say this. We can't change the perspective that other people have of us immediately. But what we need to do is to ensure we don't subscribe to the perspective that they've set for us, definition that we need to define ourselves and fix our mind on the perspective that we're going to of ourselves. Because people view us as burdens because they're always having to send aid. People, people have view us as hungry and starving. They don't know we have obesity is an issue here. It might not be as bad as other places in the world, but we have unhealthy people here as well, right? Because the only relation they have to Africa is a starving child in Somalia and Ethiopia. We think Africa is like that. But anyway, we have no control over what the outside views us. We only have control over how we view ourselves and how we are going to ourselves, and they will get to a point where they now see us the way that they're supposed to see us. So perspective should not be our primary concern. Our perspective of ourselves should be our primary concern. Just as we begin to wrap up this, I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you. Yeah. Do you have any other interesting things you'd like to say about perspective?
Wow. Perhaps maybe just to echo what you just said, like we honestly have to subscribe to our own perspective. I think for me, one of the ways that I learned this was in high school when I sort of discovered basketball. I fell in love quickly with the sport. And at the time, everybody was just like, no, you can't play this, you can't play this, because I have a presidential stature, as they put it. I'm like Frederick Chilwell or something. And so it was kind of like disheartening to know, like, hey, like, no, you can't play, you can't play. But one of the things that I decided to do is really get good at dribbling the basketball and shooting the basketball and watching a lot of basketball. Even till this day, it's probably like one of the things I watch all the time. And that sort of gave me a perspective of what was possible for me and not so much of what others dictated, And in the time that I was at my high school. I remember from the time that I was in the ninth grade, we never won a single inter-schools tournament. But the time that I was in a school team with other people, like we did that. And for me, it was just testament to the fact that I believed in myself, and even more so now to a point that I'm able to coach young people who play basketball and just share the wisdom that I had. But I believe that what ignited that and what paved the path for me to be here is that I believed in what was possible for me. The perspective I had of myself was that, hey, I may not be the biggest guy around, but I can definitely shoot, I can definitely dribble. And no matter what other people say, that is still going to work for me. And obviously that entailed getting over, this idea that, what, if only I was this, if only I had these muscles, if I was only that tall, like I had to get over that. And it was just like, what, if I can see this for myself, then it's definitely true. So I think just in really coming to a sort of a conclusion, it's really important to firmly believe in your own convictions, as opposed to what the world says, because the world will never shut up. They'll always say either you're too late. You're too late. You just can't make it. You don't have the money. You don't have this. But more importantly, the personal convictions within, I think, have been able to be sort of a driving force that has also kept out seemingly the bad or the wrong perspective from being the lens with which I view my life in or through.
I love what you just said, and it also just sparked like a story, which is ironically from high school as well. What you said, we should not allow the world to define us. People will define even before they measure us. That's the funny thing. People will just say, you can't do it, and just based on something. And my story, when I started grade 8, the school I was at the time only had 2 options, and it was between technical drawing and home economics. And then this team had their say, the girls should do home economics and the boys should do technical drawing.
Oh wow.
And I just looked at this man. I will absolutely not do home economics. I'm not doing technical drawing. Taken aback. But because of that, like the Tinashe and me had a vendetta. One of the things that was it made me work so hard that I used to top the grade. It was one of those things where it's like I had this like, you can't tell me I can't do technical drawing just because I'm a good at least give me some sort of action and let me right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you can't, don't tell me I can't do it because I'm a girl. One of those things where like every single time, like at the end of the term, I'd go up to collect like a
Nice.
performance certificate for being the
Mhm.
best.
Wow.
You extra long. It's like let's honestly. I said that to make a point, to
Mhm.
reiterate. Sometimes people will define you because even before they measure you, but just because someone is saying you're not capable of doing something doesn't
Mm.
mean, people sometimes, and sometimes it's authoritative people in authority, they will tell you, nah, I don't think you it takes. But
Yeah.
yourself, are you convicted? Have you tried and failed? And even after you failed, have you tried and tried again? How many
Yeah.
times did Thomas Edison, is he the one that
Mm.
made the light
Yeah.
fail before he actually made it? So our
Mm.
perspective should really shift from people tell us what we can and cannot do. And obviously, there are instances where people are giving you good advice. So you need to discern. But I think because of the culture that we have generally, the moment that you stand up to do something, are just like, nah, it's aside. And I feel that deters a lot of innovation. And
Wow.
I want to read, we go, I just want to read some of the comments. So like Johanna said, try to put you in a labeled box. Exactly. And the thing, don't
Mhm.
know what's on the inside of you before they can know you. And
Mm.
then she can relate. Sibu Sisiwe says presidential stage, ha ha ha. And she also a great cheerleader, Mwape. And then Niza Siwale says the point about waiting for the government is on point. Sibu Sisiwe says having the right perspective is vital. And then, yeah, there's a whole bunch of comments, but I just thought I should
Okay.
read those.
All right.
Yeah, I absolutely loved this. And please, guys, go and subscribe to Mwape's channel. He has very interesting perspective. He's such a wise young man. Like he really is. I feel you're really going far because, like, even when you didn't even give on the list of everything that you're doing, you're saying you're coaching people, and what else?
There's the graphic designing. Yeah, a host of other things that I guess I'm still learning. One of the things that I'm trying to do right now is become a good videographer because I think I'm competent to some degree, but I'm trying to learn even better. So, and obviously
Something
trying to, uh-huh.
something critical you said earlier when you were telling me about how you learned or got into graphic design. You said you got tired of waiting on people to do graphic design related stuff for you. So you just decided that you were going to learn how to do it. You read a book and
Yeah.
and from that I can derive is just the perspective you have of things, right? From
Mm-hmm.
that, just that action is just loaded with lessons. Like if you're
Mm,
really determined to do something, you're going to learn how to do it.
yeah.
You're going to go the extra mile. And you also said something earlier where you said, as a people, we've become very lazy when it comes to knowledge acquisition. We expect
Mm,
knowledge to just somehow supernaturally fall on us or enter our heads, but we
mm,
actually have in the effort, you know,
yeah.
and say you had to read an entire book and it was trial and error, but your
Yeah.
perspective is greater than the inconvenience you had to suffer. Um,
True.
yeah, and now you learned a skill, and for example, you did the graphic for discussion, which I'm great. But
You're
even
absolutely welcome.
as we conclude, even as we're talking about perspective,
Yeah.
always like to speak about sacrifice, right? And
Pardon?
how, and I always like to speak about sacrifice and conscious decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, with every given decision or action we are taking, we are either consciously deciding to do something or we are unconsciously deciding to do something. So, I want to give you an example. If
Mm-hmm.
you make a decision to not consciously seek knowledge, you are
Mm,
unconsciously a sacrifice in bettering yourself.
mm-hmm.
And because the knowledge is going to help you move from point A to point B or develop as a human being or to help develop the nation. Because you
Mm-hmm.
choose to acquire that knowledge, you are sacrificing the extent to which you could have developed yourself and developed the nation, you had taken it upon yourself to acquire knowledge. So as young people, I think we really need to conscious with the decisions that we make and the sacrifices that we're making. Sometimes we don't realize that not choosing to do something is making such a huge sacrifice on what be. So like even this conversation about perspective for me is very important, because our perspective is going to determine whether as a country we develop. Our perspective is going to determine whether as a country we become a colony of another country that's colonizes. It's going to determine whether we change the narrative, because I think we need to be the generation in Zambia that just says, no, we're tired. Like we can't just be begging for the time. Like let's be the one who said nah. Like, you know, let's change. But it's going to start with the perspective that we have, like what's important to us, you know.
Oh, wow.
Any last words?
Oh, wow. I don't think I have much to say, but I just seen some of the comments. I'm laughing at the
I've
last
seen
one.
it. Yes, Mwape, please elaborate who these people are.
Actually, I have to also give credit to, I think this is something that I wanted to kind of briefly speak about. I think it's also kind of really vital who we keep around ourselves, because they do a great deal in shaping our perspective. The reason why I was able to read a book on Photoshop and learn is because the man who commented there saying, I wonder who these people are, he kind of told me he'd read a book, and I was like, what? You read a book? And so that kind of fueled my own desire. So it's really vital, even like in relationships, kind of the people you have. I think it's really good to be obviously sociable, but I think at the same time, not everyone can have access to you. So just, the people that had access to me at that point really helped kind of, like you could say, fan the flame of my personal convictions, because like there was something within me, but someone else came and said, hey, I did this. And I was like, whoa, okay, I'm going to do it. So I think that's really vital. So, and then in closing, I just want to really say thank you, I guess, to everybody who I can recognize at least. I'll try and message each and every one of them afterwards.
I think you chose like an excellent closing point. You saying that the people that you have around you will really determine your perspective, because like Niza, shout out to Niza Siwale. He could have, but why are you even bothering? But he instead you to do something positive. So I think we also need to be conscious about the type of people we have in our immediate circle. And sometimes we can't always control the people, because sometimes these people are people you live with and they're your family, and sometimes they have negative perspectives. Wherever you can choose, let us consciously choose to have people that are going to encourage you, people that are going to build you, people that are going to expect the best from you, call you out when you're being mediocre, like that kind of. But then more importantly, what type of people are we being to the people around us and to our country? That's something with, is let's be conscious of the people we choose, but let's also be conscious of who we are. Are we a person that essentially gardens or tends to the seeds in people's mind, or are we the people that kill positive things? So I think that's a really a point that we should read on. And I want to thank you so much once again for coming, Mwape. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for everyone that stuck with us from the finish. Shout out to all of you, Siveso, Johanna. Hi, Notando. I can see you just came on. Hi, Maria. And hi, Mfumu. Thank you so much, guys. I've enjoyed this. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as we have. Catch me next Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe to Mwape's channel, Perspective with Mwape. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well, Tinashe Mazala. And if you want to see my more laid back side, subscribe to my blog, The Namfumu. Thank you so much for your time. I'm grateful.
Absolutely.
Okay, have a good night.
Bye.